I've started a new channel called Lanila Tales. Please subscribe and watch my best stories there. Link is in the description. Commander Zorl did not expect his grand invasion to begin with him screaming because a tiny creature bit his ankle. The universe had warned about enemy missiles, human resistance, and global retaliation, but no one said anything about ants with anger issues. And yet, as he flailed around in a puddle of mud surrounded by panicking alien troopers, it became painfully clear that this mission was not going as planned. It all began 30 hours earlier aboard the mothership Glorvantis, where the Alien Council gathered around a giant holographic projection of Earth. General Frax, who had never visited Earth and thought cows were a type of armored human, confidently tapped a glowing blue spot on the map. "This is New York," he declared. "A perfect landing zone." The troopers clapped their tentacles, proud and ready to conquer tall skyscrapers and subdue humans with shiny phones and bad tempers. Unfortunately, the glowing spot was not a city. It was the Amazon rainforest. A bug crawled across the holographic map at the exact moment Frax tapped it, and no one noticed. The invasion fleet entered Earth's atmosphere with blazing engines, dramatic music, and speeches about honor. Birds scattered. Clouds parted. A tribe of capuchin monkeys sitting on a branch chewed fruit and watched in confusion as 3 giant ships descended not into a city but straight into wet jungle marshland. The mighty landing crushed banana trees instead of concrete buildings. Instead of applause and terrified humans, the troopers were greeted by the smell of damp soil and distant howler monkeys. Commander Zorl stepped out first, wearing polished silver armor and a helmet that translated languages. The ground squished beneath his boots. "This is not New York," he muttered. Trooper Zik whispered maybe humans upgraded their cities to be more leafy? Before Zorl could respond, a sharp burning sensation shot through his ankle. He looked down. An ant. A small black ant. He laughed at first. Then it bit harder. Harder than a plasma burn. Zorl let out a shriek that echoed through the trees. Other troopers began hopping around as more ants swarmed their boots like tiny warriors of doom. Within minutes, chaos roared across the landing site. Plasma rifles fired randomly, as soldiers tried to shoot ants that were too small to aim at. Trooper Blarg attempted to negotiate with them by kneeling and saying "Greetings, noble Earthlings," but another bite to his toe ended the diplomacy. One soldier climbed a tree screaming, "They are everywhere, they are in my armor," while above him a toucan watched and mimicked the scream perfectly. Back aboard the command center, Assistant Navigator Fleur watched data flicker on the screen. It indicated high levels of formic acid from the ants and high levels of panic from trooper heart rates. Commander Zorl demanded someone destroy every ant hill in the area. The troopers launched small plasma grenades that exploded in the mud, sending dirt flying into their own faces. The jungle responded with silence, followed by one very annoyed jaguar growling in the shadows. Meanwhile, near the outskirts of the jungle, Dr. Elena Rivera adjusted her camera while studying insect behavior. She was fluent in 6 languages, allergic to pineapple, and obsessed with ants, especially the infamous bullet ant whose sting was compared to being shot. Suddenly her radio crackled. Strange signals? Not human. Not natural. She followed the source and found a trail of burned leaves glowing blue and smelling like overcooked fish. She raised her binoculars and froze. Aliens. Real aliens. One of them running in circles while shouting, "Get them off, get them off." Back at the landing site, Commander Zorl attempted to regain dignity. He ordered a status report. Half the troopers were dancing wildly, trying to shake ants from their suits. One was arm wrestling a monkey who had stolen his helmet. Another trooper's translator helmet had been pecked by a parrot, now loudly repeating "Retreat, retreat" in 3 different alien dialects. Zorl wiped sweat from his forehead, or what counted as a forehead in his species, and tried to deliver a heroic speech about conquest and destiny. But mid-speech he stepped on something. Another ant. He screamed again. The ants, however, were not ordinary. Beneath the soil, deep inside a labyrinth of tunnels, the bullet ant queen sensed the vibrations from above. Her antennae twitched. Her colony had slept peacefully for centuries, battling frogs and the occasional boot of an explorer. But this was different. Strange metallic creatures had arrived. They burned the ground. They disturbed the sacred roots. The queen released a pheromone not used in generations, a signal of war. As night approached, the jungle came alive with eyes glowing between vines and shadows. Alien troopers set up energy shields and tent-like shelters. Some tried to send messages back to the mothership. Others scratched invisible bites and muttered about resignation. One trooper asked quietly, "What if humans are all like these ants, tiny but painful?" No one answered. Commander Zoil sat inside his tent, legs swollen and pride crushed. He opened the mission log to record events of Day 1. Intended invasion of human capital. Result: landed in mud. Attacked by small six-legged demons. Note: never trust General Frax's map again. Outside the tent, the ants gathered near the energy shields, waiting. Above them, a pair of monkeys sat on a branch wearing stolen alien goggles, munching fruit, and giggling. Somewhere in that humid vastness, the bullet ant queen prepared her army. And deep down beneath his bruised ego, Commander Zoil realized Earth might not need guns or missiles to fight back. It had ants. And they were winning. By morning, the jungle was already hot and buzzing with tension and insects. Commander Zoil did not sleep, mostly because every time he closed his eyes he heard phantom and mandibles clicking. The alien camp looked less like an invasion site and more like a campsite for very lost tourists. Tents leaned sideways, equipment was scattered, and 3 monkeys were spotted trying to fly a hover drone. Trooper Zik walked around with an expression of quiet shame, holding a medical kit full of anti-sting gel that clearly did not work. Zoil gathered what was left of his dignity and called for a briefing. His voice cracked slightly as he declared a full-scale operation against the ants. Some troopers cheered, but most nervously scratched their ankles. Operation Ant Annihilation began with confidence and ended with embarrassment. Plasma blasters aimed at anthills sent dirt exploding into the air, but in their excitement the troopers forgot that plasma blasts attract more insects by heating the ground. Instead of destroying the ants, they created smoking craters that smelled like roasted tree bark in panic. The ants swarmed faster, angrier, crawling through armor seams. Trooper Blarg threw his helmet and ran in a zigzag, screaming, "I did not sign up for this," which was true because he actually signed the wrong form, thinking it was for cooking duty. Another trooper slipped on a patch of wet moss and accidentally fired at a nearby tree. The tree caught fire, the fire spread to a bush, and soon a flock of startled toucans flew overhead, complaining loudly in bird language. The jungle observed in silence mixed with amusement. Jaguars prowled at a safe distance, eyes glowing with interest. Capuchin monkeys gathered on branches like a curious audience at a theater. One monkey wore stolen alien goggles and nodded like a judge approving the chaos. A sloth hanging from a tree slowly turned its head, blinked, and continued doing nothing with heroic dedication. But not all jungle residents were passive observers. A group of brightly feathered macaws began mimicking alien distress calls, confusing the troopers further. Some thought reinforcements were arriving while others thought the ants had learned their language. Deep in the foliage, an indigenous tribe called the Aratak watched in silence. Their leader, Tupa, a calm man with wise eyes and ceremonial paint on his skin, studied the aliens carefully. He had seen loggers, miners, and explorers before, but never creatures from the stars who were somehow worse at surviving the jungle than city tourists. The tribe whispered among themselves. Should they help? Should they hide? Or should they simply watch the bright visitors get eaten by ants and monkeys? Tupa decided to wait. Meanwhile, Dr. Elena Rivera moved cautiously through the thick leaves. She carried her backpack full of notebooks, cameras, and a container of sugar cookies she regretted not eating earlier. She approached the alien camp slowly, heart pounding. She expected hostility, or at least lasers pointed at her face, but instead she found Trooper Zik sitting on a rock with his helmet off and a giant leaf pressed to his ankle. He looked at her, antennae drooping. "Are you here to conquer us?" she asked. Zik sighed. "No. We are here to conquer humans. But we landed in the wrong place. And the insects are winning." Elena blinked twice and sat down beside him as though this was the most logical thing to do. Back at the command tent, Commander Zoil studied a holographic map again. This time no insects were crawling across it, but his confidence was still shaken. He whispered to himself about glory, destiny, and why Earth had to be so itchy. Suddenly alarms blared outside. "Ant attack!" shouted the sensors. The troopers scrambled into formation, slipping on mud and dropping rifles. The ants had evolved their strategy. They were no longer attacking randomly. They attacked in waves, coordinated, targeting armor joints and exposed skin. This was not natural behavior. Zoro gave the order to widen the shields and activate heat repellents. A glowing blue dome extended over the camp, but the ants tested it, climbing and biting its energy surface. One particularly aggressive ant stared through the shield directly at Trooper Blarg like it knew his name. Blarg fainted on the spot. Zoro paced inside the dome, muttering about military manuals not covering insect warfare. Dr. Elena stepped forward from the tree holding her hands up. The troopers aimed rifles until Zik waved them down. Commander Zoro demanded to know if she was a warrior. She answered no, just a scientist who likes ants. Zoro made a face suggesting he did not believe anyone could like ants. Elena explained that these ants were bullet ants known to deliver the most painful sting in the world. Zoro pointed at his swollen ankle. "Confirmed," he said grimly. Elena noticed burn marks on the ground and dead insects near plasma craters. She warned them that their attacks might be making the ants more aggressive. Zoro argued that they were invaders from the stars with advanced weapons and could not negotiate with insects. At that moment another ant crawled under his armor and bit. He screamed and changed his argument mid-scream. "We can consider diplomacy." Tupa and 2 members of his tribe emerged from the shadows. They moved silently like ghosts. Tupa spoke softly, warning that the jungle has rules. Break them and the jungle will break you. The alien stared at him, unsure if this was a threat or poetry. Elena translated and added that if they destroyed the forest, the ants and everything else would fight back harder. Commander Zoro rubbed his temples, feeling a headache form beneath his helmet. He reluctantly asked Elena and Tupa for advice. The bullet ant queen meanwhile sensed the changes above. Her scouts reported strange energy fields and larger prey creatures. She released another pheromone, a call to surrounding colonies. Ants from neighboring hills began marching in numbers never seen before. Each carried the scent of purpose. The ground trembled faintly, not from alien engines but from millions of tiny feet. As the sun set behind the thick tree canopy, the alien shields flickered under relentless ant pressure. Troopers sat on crates sharpening tools and inventing new insults for ants. Elena and Tupa walked through the camp, forming a tentative plan. Commander Zoro stared at the jungle, thinking how absurd it was that his glorious invasion now depended on peace talks with humans, and possibly insects. Somewhere in the darkness a parrot called out in a perfect imitation of Zoro's scream from the day before. The troopers sighed. The jungle was not done laughing at them. The air grew heavier as days passed, thick with heat, insects, and the unspoken fear that things were about to get much worse. Commander Zoro stood outside the shimmering energy shield, watching ants crawl in intricate formations just beyond its barrier. They were no longer random or chaotic. They marched in patterns, spirals, and waves, as if following orders only they could understand. Trooper Zik stood beside him, whispering that maybe they were intelligent. Zoro scoffed, right up until an ant used a leaf to bridge itself onto the shield and sent a stinger straight through a tiny crack, hitting Trooper Blarg on the nose. Blarg screamed dramatically and fell into a puddle, while the ant scuttled away like a tiny war hero. Deep underground, the bullet ant queen sat within her throne chamber, surrounded by worker ants and glowing fungi that lit the tunnels. She was larger than any ordinary bullet ant should be, almost the size of a human hand, with mandibles sharp enough to slice leaves and skin alike. The colony pulsed with her pheromones that flowed through the tunnels like invisible commands. She sensed danger but also opportunity. Foreign creatures had disturbed the harmony of the jungle. They brought strange energy that burned the soil and vibrated through stone. She would defend her world, even if it meant war unlike any fought by mandibles and venom before. Back in the alien camp, Dr. Elena Rivera examined injured troopers and realized their bites were causing more than pain. Their skin showed allergic reactions, swelling, fever, hallucinations of dancing frogs singing alien lullabies. She muttered about toxins mixing with alien biology. She needed proper tools, samples, a lab that was not a folding table beside a nervous trooper eating leaves out of desperation. Commander Zorl approached her, trying to adjust his posture to appear strong, though his ankle still throbbed under bandages. Elena explained that attacking the ants was useless. He must understand that the colony behaves like one being, guided by a queen. Destroying random hills would only anger her further. Meanwhile, Trooper Zik tinkered with a small device behind the medical tent. He was not like other troopers who believed in conquest and explosions. Zik liked inventions, building things that beat pleasantly, and did not explode. He watched the ants from a safe distance, noticed their coordination, wondered if their behavior linked to electromagnetic signals. He adjusted his goggles and whispered to himself, fascinated and terrified. At the same time, strange things began happening in the jungle. Small animals avoided the ground, trees shook slightly even with no wind, and the soil near the alien camp cracked as tunnels expanded beneath. Commander Zorl sent scouts to investigate. They returned pale, describing giant ants, larger than before, moving like soldiers, carrying leaves, stones, even abandoned alien tools. One scout swore he saw an ant wearing a piece of alien armor strapped to its back like a trophy. The reason was soon discovered. Alien plasma had leaked into the soil during their attacks, mixing with the ant colony, the fungi, the roots. Radiation from energy shields seeped underground. The ants absorbed it. Some grew larger. Others developed thicker exoskeletons, stronger mandibles, sharper stingers. It was evolution on fast forward, triggered by alien technology. Dr. Elena looked horrified when she observed a captured mutated ant under her magnifying lens. Its eyes gleamed differently, almost thoughtful. Then came the first major clash. It happened at dusk, when the sky turned orange and the river shimmered like molten copper. The energy shield flickered for maintenance, leaving a small gap for a few minutes. The ants were waiting. They surged forward in massive waves, climbing over each other, using bodies as bridges. Troopers scrambled to close the gap. Plasma rifles fired, scorching the ground and lighting up the trees like fireworks. Mutated ants leaped, their stings leaving trails of smoke as they struck armor joints. One ant bit into a plasma gun, causing it to explode in the trooper's hands and sending him flying into a hammock set by monkeys who clapped as though it was a good performance. Jaguars and other jungle creatures watched from the shadows. A tapir trotted past unconcerned by alien chaos. Parrots screeched battle cries they had copied from alien training sessions, shouting forward units and defend the perimeter in squeaky voices. Trooper Blarg panicked and tried to climb a tree but slipped and landed on a sloth, who blinked slowly and continued chewing a leaf. Commander Zorl shouted orders while firing precise plasma shots. Trooper Zik dragged injured soldiers back and activated healing gel packs. Dr. Elena stood just inside the shield shouting instructions about not burning the entire jungle. Tupa and his tribe appeared silently from the foliage, using smoke, fire berries, and jungle herbs to repel ants. They moved like wind and shadow, working in harmony with nature. But the ants kept coming, united and relentless. The alien shield was reactivated just in time, slicing a wave of ants in half, leaving their bodies wriggling on either side. The battle ended in uneasy silence. The ground smoked, leaves smoldered, the scent of sap, plasma, and ant venom filled the air. The troopers sat exhausted, some crying quietly into their helmets. Commander Zorl looked around at the chaos and knew this was no ordinary enemy. Far below the surface, the Queen Ant received reports from surviving soldiers through pheromone signals. She understood the danger but also sensed weaknesses in the invaders. Their machines were strong but their unity was fragile. Their leader was proud but tired. Their weapons powerful yet clumsy. She released a new pheromone, sharper, darker. A call not just for defense but retaliation. In the alien camp, Zik presented a small device he built. A translator that could potentially interpret ant pheromones. Commander Zorl stared at it, confused and intrigued, before muttering that if talking to ants could end this misery, he would consider it. Elena nodded. Tupa said the jungle does not hate, it only responds. And now it was responding with fury. The night grew darker as unknown movements rustled beneath the soil. The war between stars and soil had only just begun. Commander Zorl sat near the dim glow of the shield generator, staring at the cracked soil beneath his feet as if it held all the answers he could not find. The jungle around the alien camp pulsed with life, chirping insects and whispering leaves forming an eerie orchestra. Exhaustion tugged at the troopers. Their armor was scratched, helmets dented, egos shattered. Yet beneath the silence was something new, something unexpected. The faint possibility of cooperation. Dr. Elena, Tupa, and Trooper Zik gathered around a flat stone used as an improvised table. Zik gently placed his invention on it, a small metallic cube with blinking lights, tiny vents, and a wire coiled like a snail. "It is not a weapon," he whispered nervously. "It listens. It translates pheromones." Elena raised an eyebrow and said if it worked, they might finally understand what the ants wanted besides biting ankles. Commander Zorl grumbled that if it failed, he would personally feed Zik to the nearest anthill. Morning brought a thin fog that clung to trees and drifted across the camp. Tupa led a ritual using smoldering herbs, calming the jittery troopers with sweet smoke that smelled like honey and earth. The tribe moved quietly among aliens, sharing water from carved gourds, tying leaves around swollen limbs, and painting protective symbols using berry dye. Some troopers accepted the help, humbled and grateful. Others stayed distant, clinging to their fading pride. Parrots watched from branches above, mimicking alien muttering about protocol and plasma maintenance. Zik carried his pheromone translator to the edge of the shield. He crouched and placed a drop of sugar water on a leaf beside it. Ants appeared cautiously, antennae twitching. One climbed onto the translator. The device beeped in uneven tones before producing a rough robotic voice. The voice said single words. Intruders. Fire. Pain. Colony. Commander Zorl's jaw tightened. So they hate us. Elena shook her head. No. They are warning us. They think we are invaders who threaten their home. Zorl replied that technically they are correct. Zik adjusted settings. The translator emitted a soft hum and recorded more signals. This time the voice said Queen. Threat. Protect. While this small breakthrough occurred, the aliens faced other challenges. A curious group of monkeys managed to sneak into the supply tent and stole dried rations and 3 plasma batteries. One monkey strapped a battery to his chest like armor, strutting proudly. A trooper chased him, slipped on a vine, and landed face first in mud. 2 macaws clapped their wings and cackled. Nearby, a sloth was slowly chewing on what might have once been a communication cable. The jungle was both enemy and entertainer. Commander Zorl reluctantly agreed to a meeting with Elena and Tupa to discuss peaceful solutions. They sat around a fire pit surrounded by towering trees. Tupa explained that the jungle has always protected itself. Those who take without respect face consequences. Elena added that the ants have lived here longer than any empire. If the aliens wanted peace, they must stop destroying the ground, stop burning trees, and find a way to coexist temporarily. Zorl rubbed his temples. He had conquered icy planets, floating islands, and once a castle built on the back of a giant turtle. But never had he been forced to negotiate with insects and humans who wore leaves. While this fragile alliance formed, danger brewed within the alien ranks. Lieutenant Gore, known for his sharp tusks and sharper ambition, watched the discussions with contempt. He whispered to other troopers that their commander had grown weak. That they should crush the ants with full power, scorch the jungle, claim glory. His words spread like smoke. Some troopers nodded eagerly, others avoided his gaze. Zik overheard and trembled, knowing how destructive such rebellion could be. In the afternoon, under the green canopy, the first signs of true collaboration emerged. Elena and Zik tested non-lethal repellents made from alien tech and jungle herbs. They sprayed a small patch of soil. Ants approached, sniffed, and then turned away peacefully. Commander Zorl watched, surprised. Meanwhile, Tupa taught troopers how to step on forest ground without crushing roots or disturbing nests. He demonstrated how to use smoke instead of fire to deter insects. The troopers, clumsy at first, slowly followed his lead. One managed to walk 5 steps without falling, which was considered a victory. Humor crept back into the air like a shy bird. A parrot landed near the camp and mimicked Commander Zorl's earlier scream with perfect accuracy. Instead of anger, some troopers laughed for the first time in days. Another parrot repeated status report. "I have been bitten 17 times," in a dramatic tone, causing snorts of laughter. A group of monkeys returned plasma batteries wearing them like jewelry and traded them for bananas offered by Tupa's tribe. Peace in exchange for snacks. But beneath the calm, the ants prepared for something greater. The bullet ant queen sensed the invaders' hesitation. She sent scouts to test their defenses, to monitor their machines, to study their alliances. But she also sensed new scents, strange yet gentle, that spoke of restraint rather than destruction. It confused her but did not change her resolve. The colony must survive. Night descended with chirping cicadas and the glow of fireflies. Commander Zorl sat by the fire, his armor undone, his posture weary but thoughtful. Zik worked on improving the translator while Elena scribbled notes about pheromone patterns and alien biology. Tupa stared into the flames and whispered that the jungle could become a friend or a grave, depending on their next choices. In the shadows beyond the firelight, Lieutenant Gore sharpens his blade-like claws, plotting. He would not allow peace to steal his glory. Nearby, ants marched silently beneath the soil, responding to the Queen's call. Above the canopy, stars glimmered like distant witnesses. In this quiet moment between battles, a fragile hope flickered, as delicate as a leaf and as uncertain as dawn. The peace inside the alien camp was fragile, like a leaf floating on a stormy river. Everyone sensed it would not last. The Bullet Ant Queen had sent thousands of new soldiers through the underground tunnels, closer to the alien ship and its humming metallic walls. Commander Zorl stood near the ramp of the spacecraft, watching the forest treeline where shadows shifted like breathing lungs. Trooper Zik tightened the straps on his backpacks filled with tools and the latest version of his pheromone translator. Dr. Elena prepared jars of herbal mixtures meant to repel rather than kill. Tupa and members of his tribe painted symbols on their skin for protection and whispered to the trees as though asking permission to fight. Inside the camp something else stirred in silence and anger. Lieutenant Gore, with sharp eyes and sharper ambition, paced behind a supply crate whispering to a small group of loyal troopers. "The plan is simple," he muttered. "We do not need peace with insects or humans. We need victory. Tonight we disable the shield and launch a full plasma strike on the colony." His followers nodded, some eager, others unsure but afraid to argue. Gore's gaze was hungry for glory, blind to consequence. By late evening the jungle trembled. It began with a faint vibration, like distant drums, but it grew stronger until even the trees shook. Trooper Blarg dropped his helmet and clutched a vine, screaming, "It is happening again." The ground at the edge of the ship split, and poured out a tide of ants, black and relentless. But this time there were hundreds of thousands, moving not like insects but like an army, bodies forming living bridges, spirals, ropes that climbed up the ship's landing gear. The spacecraft sensors blared, organic hostiles detected. The hull crackled with tiny legs scraping the metal. Commander Zorl shouted for defenses. Troopers activated plasma turrets, but the ants overwhelmed them, clogging barrels and short-circuiting wires with their acid venom. Dr. Elena yelled for non-lethal repellents. Tupa commanded his people to light smoke torches and scatter crushed fire herbs. A thick aromatic smoke drifted across the battlefield, slowing some ants but not enough. The Queen's soldiers pressed forward, guided by pheromones of fury. Then betrayal struck. Lieutenant Gore crept toward the shield generator with 2 troopers. In one swift movement he sliced through the power conduit with his claws. The shield flickered, sparked, and died. The dome of protection vanished like mist. The swarms surged inward. Commander Zorl spun around, eyes wide with disbelief. Gore stood there, chest heaving with pride, and shouted, "Now we fight like warriors." Zorl's voice thundered back, "You fool, you doomed us all." But it was too late. Ants poured through the camp like a living river. Plasma fire, smoke, screams, and war cries filled the air. The ground was a chaos of trampling feet, snapping mandibles, and glowing weapons. Mutated ants, larger and armored, leaped onto troopers, biting through metal. Jaguars and ocelots, frightened and confused, fled deeper into the forest. Parrots screeched battle orders they had heard from aliens, yelling "Hold the line" in ridiculous high-pitched voices while flying for their lives. Monkeys threw fruit, sticks, and stolen screws at anything that moved. Dr. Elena, clutching a pouch of herbs, dragged injured troopers to safety. She saw Trooper Zik crouched beside the translator device, hands trembling as he tried to lock onto the Queen's pheromone frequency. The machine emitted static, then fragments of words. Protect. Colony. Destroy invaders. Zik shouted to Commander Zoil, "The Queen thinks we plan to burn everything." Zoil yelled back, "Then convince her we will not." Zik adjusted the frequency and broadcast a pheromone message of retreat, peace, no fire. Ants hesitated for a moment, confused by conflicting signals. Gore saw the hesitation and roared louder, charging into the swarm with dual plasma blades. Ants swarmed him, covering him like moving armor. He swung wildly, slicing dozens, but more crawled up his limbs. His screams echoed until they ended abruptly. Suddenly a deep tremor rolled beneath the earth. Everyone froze. From cracked soil emerged a colossal ant, larger than any they had seen, dripping venom and carrying the pheromone scent of the Queen. It reared back, mandibles clicking like thunder. The Queen was not here physically, but this was her champion. Troopers stepped back in terror. The monstrous ant charged toward the ship, intent on destroying the invader's heart. Commander Zoil did the unexpected. Instead of ordering fire, he stood in front of the creature, weapon lowered, hands raised. He shouted through the translator device connected to his armor. "We will stop burning the jungle. We will leave. We do not want war anymore." Zik amplified the message in pheromone form. The giant ant halted inches from Zoil, antennae quivering. The Queen, miles below, felt the message. Images of fire, rifles, human faces, and alien fear flowed through pheromone communication. For the first time she sensed something other than destruction from the invaders. She sensed exhaustion, sorrow, regret. But her army was already in motion. Ants continued to surge. Some troopers ignored Zoil and fired anyway. To end this, something more was needed. Dr. Elena looked at Tupa, then at Zik. She whispered, "Release the spice bombs." Tupa nodded. His tribe rolled clay spheres filled with ground fire herbs, chili powder, and alien shock dust into the ant ranks. They exploded softly into clouds of burning scent too intense for any creature. Ants recoiled, not wounded but overwhelmed. They scattered, no longer coordinated. Meanwhile, Trooper Blarg accidentally set off a plasma net that flew into a tree, trapping 3 confused Makas who immediately began insulting him in alien language. The chaos slowly faded. Ants retreated in streams, disappearing into cracks. The giant one gave a final stare at Zoil before descending back underground. The battlefield went quiet except for crackling leaves and distant monkey chatter. Bodies lay scattered, alien and insect alike. Smoke curled into the canopy. Commander Zoil stared at the broken shield generator and the silent translator device. His voice was low when he said, "We must finish this with respect, or we will not survive the next attack." In the depths of her chamber the Queen lowered her antennae, not in surrender but in contemplation. She would wait, watch, and judge their next move. Above her the aliens, humans, and jungle stood shaken but alive, bound by a fragile thread of understanding. And for the first time since they landed, the night did not echo with screams but with silence, heavy and uncertain. Dawn crept over the jungle with mist curling around the trees and a silence so heavy it pressed against every living thing. The battle was over but no one felt victorious. The alien camp was a mess of broken equipment, smoking craters, and exhausted troopers sitting on overturned crates with their helmets in their hands. Commander Zoil stood near the ship, looking older than before, his armor dented and splattered with dirt. The air still carried the sting of herbs and plasma residue. Somewhere far below, in the endless tunnels of her colony, the bullet ant queen remained still, not yet forgiving, not yet attacking again. She was waiting. Watching. Dr. Elena, her hands blistered and clothes stained, tended to wounds both alien and human. She could barely feel her legs from fatigue. Tupa and his tribe spoke softly to the forest, offering calm chants to soothe what had been disrupted. Trooper Zik sat beside the pheromone translator, touching the metal gently like it was a living creature. He had modified it through the night, adjusting its signals to match peace, offering phrases of apology, withdrawal, and respect into the air like prayers. The ants near the perimeter listened but did not advance. Inside the underground chamber the queen received faint chemical whispers. She understood only fragments. No fire. Leave soon. Apology. She hesitated. Ants did not forgive easily. But survival mattered more than vengeance. She sent out a cautious pheromone. Wait. Evaluate. Do not attack unless threatened. Commander Zorl called a meeting under a tall ceiba tree where smoke from extinguished fires still lingered. Elena, Tupa, and Zik stood beside him. A handful of troopers gathered, eyes dull with exhaustion. Zorl spoke plainly, his voice low and tired. He said they would not fire another plasma weapon. The invasion was over. They would leave the jungle, leave Earth, if the ants allowed them to go. Some troopers protested weakly, but no one truly wanted another battle. They had faced bullets on other planets, but never pain delivered by insects the size of a fingernail who fought like an army of ghosts. While repairs on the ship began, Zik used the translator to send one final message underground. Leaving soon. No more burning. Respect colony. The device crackled, then a single pheromone reply emerged. Go. But if you return with fire, we will return with war. Zik translated it aloud. Everyone nodded silently. Then came the final test. The queen sent her chosen champion once more. The earth parted near the camp and the giant mutated and emerged slowly, its mandibles reflecting morning light. Troopers stepped back, hands hovering near weapons but not drawing them. Commander Zorl walked forward alone. His ankles still swollen, his voice steady. He bowed his head slightly to the creature. He placed his plasma dagger on the ground and stepped away from it. He spoke through the translator. We honor your land. We leave it to you. No more destruction. No more fire. The giant ant stood motionless. Zik adjusted the translator to broadcast calm pheromones. Dr. Elena held her breath. Tupa muttered a short prayer. After a long moment the ant lowered its body slowly, touching its antenna to the ground in front of Zorl like a warning and a promise. Then it turned and crawled back into the trembling earth. The ground sealed behind it. Elena finally exhaled. Tupa smiled faintly. The jungle was quiet, but it no longer felt hostile. Preparation for departure began in earnest. Troopers fixed broken thrusters with vines holding parts together until proper repairs could be made in space. Monkeys watched curiously from the treetops, occasionally throwing fruit at passing aliens. One monkey returned a stolen alien boot, wearing it proudly on his head like a helmet. Parrots circled above, shouting farewell captain in alien accents and imitating dramatic alien screams for entertainment. Commander Zorl walked through the camp one last time. He saw troopers sharing dried rations with Tupa's tribe, laughing gently despite bruises and insect bites. He saw Zik teaching Elena how to adjust the translator to study insect communication. He wondered how he had come so far from the glory he imagined and ended up here, humbled by ants. When the ship roared back to life, the ground did not shake from fear but from acceptance. The landing ramp lowered. Troopers filed in quietly. Tupa presented Zorl with a single colorful feather from a harpy eagle, a symbol of respect and a warning to fly wisely. Elena handed Zorl a small journal containing drawings of bullet ants and notes about pheromones. For research, she said. He nodded. Zik hesitated, then offered Elena a small metal cube. Alien data, he said softly. Maps of stars. Knowledge, not weapons. Before boarding, Commander Zorl stepped onto the soft jungle floor one last time. His foot crushed a leaf. And then it crushed something else. He froze. Pain exploded through his leg. Another bullet ant. One last sting. Zorl screamed to the sky, louder than he ever had before. Parrots immediately repeated his scream 10 times. Troopers turned away, pretending not to laugh. Elena handed him a leaf poultice, trying not to smile. Zorl muttered that his people would never invade Earth again, even if the galaxy begged them to. The ship lifted off with a low hum, smoke curling from engines repaired with desperation and duct tape of alien design. As it rose above the canopy, animals gathered below. Jaguars, monkeys, sloths, parrots, and millions of ants watched the silver vessel vanish into the clouds. The Queen Underground felt the earth calm again. She released a new pheromone. Victory, peace, vigilance. The jungle returned to its rhythm. Leaves swayed. Birds sang. Somewhere high above, a ship of defeated but wiser aliens drifted into the stars, carrying stories of a world where humans, nature, and ants defended their land not with bombs, but with unity and tiny ferocious jaws. And in the command logs of the great mothership, Commander Zorl wrote simply, "Do not return to Earth. Ants live here.